Working is presented by Maya Strategy Group, a leading market research and strategy consulting firm, helping clients in the pet care and animal health industries navigate strategic challenges for almost 2 decades.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pet Working. I'm Peter Kenseth, Vice President and Partner at Maya Strategy Group, and I am here today for an exciting conversation on one of the hottest trends that is sweeping the pet food market and has been sweeping it for a couple of years now. But honored to have Russell Breuer, founder of Spot Tango, on the show with me today. Russell has a relationship that goes back with one of my partners, the founder and CEO of Maya Strategy, Neil Sichter, and it's kind of nice to have this full circle connection where Russell and I are now sitting down to chat. So, Russell, I'm psyched to have you on the show. I'd love, I'm sure a lot of people know Spot and Tango, but I also know that, there's always a good opportunity to introduce your brand to people who haven't heard of it before. So tell us a little bit about Spot and Tango, how you founded the brand, and, then maybe we can get into a little bit about the fresh pet food market and what you're doing to remain competitive in such a rapidly evolving and increasingly crowded space.
Yes, awesome to be here, Peter. Thanks for the opportunity. And yes, Neil and I used to work together at a consulting firm in Washington, D.C. Gosh, it goes back to 2012. So years and years ago. So it is kind of a full circle moment and great to be here. The founding story of Spot and Tango is, it's cliche, but it's true. It's a studio apartment in New York City on the Upper East Side. My wife, Molly, and I were cooking fresh human grade meals for our mini golden doodle, Jack, really out of a love for animals. We're mission driven people and, believe that health and wellness is a right, not a luxury. And soon realized that millions of Americans felt the same way about their dogs. Dog used to sleep outside. Now the dog sleeps in the bed. And actually credit for the idea goes to my mother-in-law, who cooked fresh food for her dog, George. So there's a lineage of behavior where it's recipe control, and ingredient integrity was like the driving force. And, I researched the market and thought it was a good opportunity. So we, for a couple of years, my wife and I kind of bootstrapped, side hustled this thing. It was, cooking in the kitchen in the studio apartment. Then it was cooking in an incubator kitchen, then formulating recipes such they were complete and balanced for a dog's dietary needs. Pieced together a small website, and this thing started growing. Eventually, quit my day job, took this on full time in 2018, and we've been scaling ever since. So, in short, we are a subscription model, digitally native. Food, health, and wellness is the core offering, and now we also sell treats, supplements, and we have a new dental care offering called Pup Gum, which we launched a few months ago. So it's really holistic health and wellness across all categories, delivered direct to consumer. That's really at its root what the business model is.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the direct to consumer model, because I think for a lot of people that's where fresh pet food started, right? You think of the two giants in the industry. One, Fresh Pet, kind of went with the we're going to go into FDM, we're going to buy our own fridges, we're going to put it in there, and we're going to put it in your face in the supermarkets, and that's never frozen, all fresh, and you can get it at the grocery store. The other half of it, you see the farmer's dog, and from the farmer's dog also, just food for dogs, Ollie, Nom Nom. People jumped on that train, and for so long it was this direct to consumer, shipped to your house, frozen, dry ice. And then, probably 2-3 years ago, we started seeing players like Stella and Chewy getting into the frozen fresh, market. And, there was fresh, freezers in independent pet food stores. And that, started to further delineate the market. This past year, we've seen Hills acquire Prime 100. We've seen Royal Canin launch a fresh frozen product. We've seen Blue Buffalo. They're going to have their own fridges in stores with tubs and chubs, kind of like a Fresh Pet. And it's interesting because I think, certainly the pet food industry is one where there is a lot of mimicry that goes on, and everybody jumps on the next hot craze. But I think what's really cool about the fresh movement is that there is science and, I think a lot of real life anecdotal evidence to show that feeding these minimally processed, fresh, freeze dried, air dried diets is better for your pet. And I don't think there's a better example of it than when we see these giants in the industry, the Hills and the Royal Canins and the Blue Buffalo, who have been synonymous with kibble for so long, getting into this space that there's acknowledgement that this is real. But on the flip side of it, I imagine that makes it somewhat more challenging for a brand like Spot and Tango that, as you see more and more players crowd into this space, what's been your strategy to kind of defend against that? Is that
Yeah,
where,
great question, Peter. So we started as a fresh frozen brand only. So to your point, insulation, cold chain, dry ice, store in freezer, defrost in fridge, and serve. Expensive. Cold chain is costly. Defrosting is inconvenient. Often you open the pack. What do you do with a fresh pet? I still don't know to this day. You cut the tube or the kind of sausage shape, and then
the chub, yeah,
Ziploc, or does it go in the Tupperware? Like, remains to be seen. Okay, everyone has a different way. Our core business is really not fresh frozen. We made a decision in 2020 to launch a really first of its kind novel category called fresh dry. And that was in response to customer feedback that fresh frozen just like ain't it. It's expensive and it's inconvenient. So the challenge to us was, how do we maintain ingredient integrity in this mission-driven brand, but offer something that's less expensive and that can be stored in the pantry? And we came up with UnKibble. So UnKibble offers the benefits of a fresh frozen diet and the convenience of kibble. We take all of the original ingredient inputs, human grade, holistic ingredients. We shape those ingredients into spheres. And then through our fresh dry process, we extract all of the water from the product such that it is cooked at low temperature and shelf stable. And that is UnKibble. And the reason why it's more affordable, we cut out insulation and dry ice. So on average, UnKibble is 30 to 40% less expensive than all of the other fresh players you've just mentioned. Those that are either on shelf or about to launch on the shelf or D2C, we're occupying a price point above premium kibble and below everybody else. And that's one of the reasons why that product's been so successful. That's now a 9-figure business specifically. We insourced all of the production. We built a dedicated factory in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and insourced that production just to focus on things like product consistency, abundance of supply. In fact, I tell these stories. We launched UnKibble in kind of April 2020. We were like a 5-man company, early days. We didn't know really what.
And launched it in the middle of COVID, huh?
Middle of COVID. We all had COVID. The purchase order was, we were debating with my co-founder, we were debating whether to order $70,000 worth of product or $80,000 worth of product. And we thought it would last 3 to 4 months. We sold out in 4 days. And then we issued a $500,000 purchase order to a co-man at the time who laughed. They didn't think it was possible to generate that much selling velocity of a product that was that new in its kind of life cycle. And that was UnKibble's story, which then turned into outsource it all to 6 co-mans at our peak. We had 18-wheeler trucks going all over the country. And eventually we decided it's better to do it ourselves. It was a very contrarian view, frankly. No one builds their own factory. Everyone outsources their marketing engines. We control it all. It all goes through Allentown. We touch the ingredients. We know the procurement. We know the upstream suppliers. We control quality in our own facility. And then we ship last mile to customer. And so that has been, for us, a big game change. No one else in the market's doing that. We're not playing in the same format. As I mentioned, there's quite a difference there. And from supply chain perspective, we are the inverse of all of those brands. That's why we've been successful.
In a lot of ways, it worst possible time to start a company, right in the middle of COVID with supply chain shortages. And, I think back to those days and talking to my clients, and, they're worried about stockouts and allocating product and, whether they were co-manufacturing or whether they, handling their manufacturing themselves. Hard to get a hold of ingredients at that point in time. I'm shocked you were able to make a $5,000 purchase order. At the, the inverse of it, all that shortage and supply chain, it wasn't just caused by, all the bottlenecks and things, that came along with COVID. And I think we also had the Texas freeze back then, and we had the Suez Canal. I mean, supply chain got ruined that year.
Yes. Right.
But on the flip side of it, 23 million pets were adopted in 2020 due to COVID. So the demand for pet food, in addition to all those supply chain, and distribution constraints, there was also incredible competition for product because there were so many more pets because people were at home and people were adopting. And so it sounds like you managed to balance that just right.
We did. No doubt it was a challenge. And during COVID, you either lost on the demand side or supply side of the equation. We had unbelievable demand and supply was a struggle. We've obviously addressed that now through the insourcing point, which I made. But I think generally, health and wellness is here. It's happening. Direct to consumers, there's a huge value proposition because it's a personalized product. It's shipped direct to the home. There's price and affordability, which I mentioned as well. And so, I think these products really resonate with the consumer and generally, the number of searches for products that are either minimal ingredients or a single ingredient in particular. Our treats are all single ingredient, human grade as well. It just resonates.
Yeah.
It's your point.
No, I mean, we've seen it at, Super Zoo and Global Pet. And, I know I was talking about it with you. And when I saw you at Super Zoo in August, I mean, that trend towards minimally processed, really hit probably August, sometime summer 2024. I remember at Super Zoo 2024, it was like, okay, this is very much the messaging that everybody's latching on to. It further proliferated at Global 2025, Super Zoo. Yeah, I mean, it's there. I think, we've done episodes, going back a couple of years, with Primal Pet Foods and Dr. James Templeman, who their director of nutrition, and the papers they've published on, the nutritional superiority of minimally processed diets, so freeze-dried or air-dried, raw. I'd be curious, you mentioned, it sounds like UnKibble is more of like a dehydrated. Describe the manufacturing process, because, I know a lot of people sort of feel like freeze-dried versus air-dried versus dehydrated are, somewhat interchangeable. But from what I have seen, dehydrated tends to be the most cost-effective in terms of the price point you're able to offer to the consumer. And I know you mentioned, and I agree with it, that health and wellness and being able to eat well is a right, not a luxury. And I think that's a great philosophy, to bring to our pets. But I think, the other side of it is, you do have to, not everybody can afford to feed, some of these fresh frozen products that are in the market.
Right.
And you mentioned, you've been able to achieve 30 to 40% less. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it starts with upstream supply. So what types of proteins are in our products? And we have, beef UnKibble, we have turkey, we have chicken, we have cod and salmon. And on the fresh side, we have beef, chicken, and lamb as well. They're all USDA human grade sourced. In fact, our upstream suppliers, the beef that goes into our products is also beef that goes to Whole Foods. It's beef and products that go to grocery stores and restaurants. So we are literally sourcing from the same supply chain that humans consume in the US. It's ingredients you'd feed your family. So that's the starting point. And that's inclusive of any starches we use like brown rice, or vegetables we use like carrots, etc. That's the starting point. The second piece is one of the reasons why we're very different is that the composition of UnKibble is 50% protein, 25% starch, and 25% fruit and vegetables. So what you look at is very different than other brands in like the freeze-dried space. Their protein levels are usually 90% plus. It's basically meat and then some veg that you're consuming. And those brands they use this word freeze-dried raw. So they're not really cooking the product. They maintain this element of raw, and it's mostly meat that they're selling in a shelf-stable format. UnKibble is a fresh dry process. So we do use freeze dryers from a processing from like a technology perspective. And that's the process of sublimation, which is effectively extracting water from the product during a cycle in a freeze dryer. But the fresh dry process is trade secret, such that we are actually cooking the product concurrent to freeze drying. And so we are reaching a cooking temperature such that the product is cooked after completion of that cycle, which is then packaged and shipped to 3PL. And that's taken years to dial in and develop. Finding suppliers that want to work with us, because oftentimes dog is a 3-letter word or 4-letter word rather to suppliers who don't have, experience working in pet, because pet usually historically has never been in the human grade space. So these suppliers we'd call upon, they'd say like, great, you use like fresh, beef and green beans and carrot. We've got all that stuff. Amazing. Are you a meal kit company? Are you a ret? No, this is going to the dogs. And in often cases the phone would go quiet and they'd say, well, that's not something that we would ever consider. And then the phone rings, a year later and they go, actually, we've learned a lot more about what you're doing in the industry. And like, oh my gosh, like, yes, we can produce those recipes. And by the way, like, can you send us any volume? And the answer, year prior was, maybe here's 1 million pounds that we can, now it's millions of pounds of product a year. And so it's been interesting to watch the supply chain evolve over time, as I think there's been more maturity and education around the space. And now there's a lot of human players in the supply chain that are now playing within pet, which is an interesting evolution, because there's, as you know, there's a historical segmentation between human or food grade product and feed grade being pet. Pet was always kind of secondary, lack of quality control, lack of ingredient integrity, use of rendered meats, use of meat meals. The food,
use of offal,
human grade space is the inverse of that. That's the world that we live in. And then just to kind of round out my commentary in terms of like, dehydrated, air dried, baked, roasted, those are all high heat after extruded as well. Those are higher heat processes where there's browning on the product. There's heat above and heat below. That is detrimental to the original vitamin and mineral inputs to the product. The fresh dry process, fresh and through this freeze dry technology, all of the original vitamin and mineral nutrients as part of all of these original ingredients is maintained. So what you put in, you get out, and that's inclusive of color. So I'll give you an example. In UnKibble, you can see the orange of the carrot. You can see the green of the green bean. You can see the red of the beet. If you air dried our product, the output is brown. It is cooked. And so just in terms of like health and wellness, it's a far inferior product, those products plural.
Right.
Because
you're not getting any denatured proteins. You're not getting any.
And again, like those products, to your point, is there more efficiency from like a production process? Yes. Is there margin enhancement opportunities through that efficiency? Yes. Is the ingredient quality as good? No. What we're doing is like the Rolls Royce from a processing perspective. We haven't taken price increase on the consumer. We've just found through scale, economies of scale, ways to make our P&L hum such that we can grow 50% year over year profitably. We've been smart about financial management in the business. And despite a more expensive processing, from a production perspective, we have found great efficiency throughout the P&L to make this business really work economically.
Even in this environment where we're seeing inflation, where we're seeing, price taking, almost across the board,
We don't do it. We just don't do it. We have honored our commitment to the customer. Again, like we're playing in affordable health and wellness, which by the way, is really tough. No doubt we get calls where protein prices move up. Beef, for example, from a cost perspective has been higher, but we look for other ways. It's like, great, well, what can we do on last mile shipping? How can we get closer to the customer to reduce those costs? Are there things we can do with packaging, exterior boxes? Are there things we can do to improve freight and efficiency from a transportation perspective? What is the OpEx in the company? How many people do we need in the company to actually run the business successfully? And so we turn those dials to find ways to protect the margin such that we can do what we do without compromising and pushing price onto the customer. That's really important. And ultimately, we're a subscription business, so retention is important, and not only offering extremely high quality product economically, but over serving that experience is really key to the business as well.
Yeah. Look, I think back, the last 4 or 5 years, and the studies we've done, with my clients in the pet food space, worrying about protein shortages, worrying about alternative sourcing, seeing this like convergence where people and pets are competing, for the same protein. And a lot of it is driven by the shift into human grade. I think, the fresh movement, has really propagated that. You think of Just Food for Dogs starting out, making their product in human grade kitchens, and and similar to like what you said with the suppliers, for a lot of places, they absolutely did not want, a pet food manufactured and, sharing manufacturing space with human food lines. And it has become increasingly more accepted because of the work that you and, other companies that are doing in the fresh food space. But I also wonder, we have a human population that's continually growing. We have a pet population that is growing. And ultimately there is going to be this convergence point. Do you worry, about the ability to scale and about the ability to continue to grow while maintaining true to, the human grade ingredient composition?
Yeah, that's a great, I mean, interesting question. So we are like puritanical about ingredient quality. As we've launched new products, there's been, examples where someone may say, oh, by the way, if you use this product, this ingredient, it's 30% less expensive and you can get all you want. And the answer is like, for us has always been no, like absolutely not. I think the second you compromise on quality or integrity of the business, like it's the beginning of the end. I believe that to be true. One, two, the market for pet is so vast. There's 90 million dogs in the country, household ownership, like 7 in 10 households have a dog. It's a tremendous time to be operating in like the pet food space. We're a 9-figure business, but in terms of market share, it's less than 50 basis points. Like we don't have a large share in the market, but we are able to generate scale just given how large the category is. And then to your point about, concerned about growth or scale, like, no, I mean, Blue Buffalo, other brands, these are billion-dollar-plus businesses. Like, do I believe we're headed in that direction? The answer is yes. Just given how many pets there are, how many dogs, consumer trends, behaviors towards the humanization of pets, like it's here, it's happening. And again, we don't just offer food. We offer other products too, treats, supplements, and pup gum as well that I mentioned, which I'm happy to talk about. But those are really fun verticals, and I think ultimately for us, it's really there's no ceiling in terms of opportunity here.
That's awesome to hear. No, that's cool. And I particularly, I think we're in an interesting time because as you and I were talking about earlier, we are seeing some headwinds in the pet space with rising veterinary costs and people feeling like they're being priced out of pet ownership. So I think it's super important to be doing what you're doing and making good nutrition affordable for people and accessible for people. I do want to talk about pup gum because I'm also fanatical about dental health and the health benefits that can bring to dogs. And a big part of what I was mentioning, the Angel Fund and what we're doing there, we're also trying to make that a platform to make it so that people don't get to the point where they're having to make tough decisions about their finances and their pet's health, whether that be through pet insurance or just through good, proactive, responsible pet ownership, like feeding quality, nutritious products and, paying attention to things like regular vet visits and brushing your dog's teeth every day or, using other forms of good dental hygiene. So I want to talk to you about pup gum. Tell me a little bit about it. And before we close, I will say I also want to ask you, you mentioned personalization earlier, and I just wanted to get a sense of, to what degree do you see personalization going? Because I think that's another big trend that we've seen within the space.
Yeah, and happy to kind of address, but I'll start with personalization. Actually, that was a big game change for our business. In the early days, we offered like small, medium, large plans, which obviously are quite simple. But in our funnel on the website, we create buy-in because we learn a lot about your dog's weight, activity level, lifestyle. Are you an overweight bulldog? How often does your dog exercise? We use that to inform volume consumed per day per meal. Obviously, one of the industry challenges is that feeding guidelines are very broad. A 30-pound dog feed 1 to 3 scoops per day. That's a huge caloric band. And maybe you feed 1 scoop in the morning and your wife feeds 3 scoops at night because she loves Spot. That's not good for Spot's waistline, right? So
Right.
we've dialed in and used personalization such that we are recommending the exact amount of calories that dog needs per meal. And we are addressing a major problem as far as obesity, which impacts 1 in 3 dogs in this country. So
I think it's also super important for people who are transitioning from kibble to a freeze-dried product because, I don't know to what extent you have research on this, but, we've seen, and I think the industry kind of accepts that a lot of people still feed non-kibble based products as a topper. And so, being able to kind of understand how much to blend in, or if I'm switching over from kibble completely, I think that's awesome. That's great that you guys have that tool.
that was a big unlock for the business. And then the pup gum story is we wanted to launch a dental care product. The original idea was kind of like a dental stick. They're star shaped, and it just wasn't working. The product development phase, and a lot of brands that play dental, they all look the same. It's this kind of elongated stick. They're all the same color. There's a few co-mans that produce them. It's all quite boring, frankly. It's like there's all greenies and there's everybody else. So we started toying with the idea, and dental is obviously so important because periodontal disease infects 95% of the dog population 3 years and older. People don't brush their dog's teeth. It's hard. If you don't do it,
I feel like I'm the exception there, but yeah.
There you go. Good for you. If you don't do it and you need a cleaning, it's cost prohibitive, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
pup gum, the genesis was like the product development, like it wasn't working. And we were kind of, the result was this kind of pliable stick that we had. It was like bendy, a little bit, like a bit soft. And we started toying with this idea, like, well, it kind of feels like gum. But it's not. And like, could we ever sell a gum for dogs? And we kind of debated that for a while. And then we partnered with this incredible business that spent 2 years and, a significant amount of capital developing a postbiotic product with hard clinical claims, a white paper, in fact, that their product, which is a fermentate, it's like a postbiotic, that it reduces the biofilm on a dog's teeth. Biofilm leads to plaque, plaque leads to bad odor. So what we did was we took the stick, we changed the shape, we added this postbiotic inside. We use blue spirulina, which turns the product blue, and we have flax seeds. And the shape, there's a mechanical brushing action. So when the dog is chewing, it's scraping the teeth, but it's also ingesting this novel ingredient that reduces the biofilm, which leads to bad odor. So there's like 2 huge functional value propositions, and we called it pup gum. So it plays in the dental care category, but it's pup gum. It's like an amazing brand. It's honestly first of its kind. I'm not just saying that, it's true.
Yeah.
Launched it.
No, I haven't.
DC.
I've heard of, some products out there that, are able to achieve like reduction in plaque from like kelp and things like that, but not anything that combines it with like a mechanical, and
Yes,
that's cool.
So it's been
I mean,
fun.
because you're right, most people don't brush
They don't.
every day.
Sorry.
I I get it. I thought it was normal, and then I realized I'm kind of the oddball that actually takes the time to brush Penny's teeth every night. But it's like, it took probably 2 years to get to that point, because when I started trying to brush her teeth with a toothbrush, she had wanted nothing to do with it. And then, I kind of let it be. And then I found a finger brush, and she was okay with my finger being in her mouth, just not the toothbrush. And so now we just brush with the finger brush and
Works. Yeah.
get it in there. But like, I'm
Art.
certainly, I still give her dental treats and things like that, because it's like, the biggest predictor of, so many diseases start in the mouth. I mean, and the biggest predictor of good overall health is good dental health.
That's
If you
right.
have gum disease and, you know, all of a sudden that makes it painful for your dog to eat, they're not eating as well. They get bacteria in there that then get into their gut. And, so that is super cool.
That
I'll
we
have to.
launched, I'll plug it. It's called pupgum.com. We sell it both in Spot and Tango's ecosystem, but as a separate brand, pupgum.com. You can buy it
Okay.
on subscription.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
It's a fun project.
Yeah, the how's the palatability on it? Or do you find most?
Fantastic. NPS score is very high, great repeat rates. It's already, multiple millions of dollars of revenue run rate in seemingly a few weeks. So it's off to the races. It's been a really fun project.
Russell, getting back to the personalization thing, and obviously, there's the size and portion and feeding and things like that. We also see, more and more, this trend towards, breed specific or, kind of customized diets. The example I think of that, really caught on in Europe, but never has really caught on here in the US is Royal Canin has their Individualis product, where you get like you go to the vet, you take a survey, and they have like 10,000 different permutations that, it is literally a custom crafted diet for your dog. Obviously, that's very prohibitive from a manufacturing standpoint, but do you feel like, is that kind of the next frontier? What are your thoughts on that as more people crowd into the fresh space, and we have these bespoke kitchens and things like that? Do you ever see?
Yeah, we've debated that internally. I think, ultimately what we do now is from a personalization perspective, like in our email and SMS funnels, like communicating to, golden retriever content to golden retriever owners. Like golden retriever doesn't want to hear about bulldog, they want to hear about golden retriever. So there is segmentation based on breed in terms of kind of a marketing and communication strategy. That's like one piece. There's lots that we do as well. Obviously we can reach out to the overweight cohort, dogs that have allergies or a picky eater as well, for starters. In terms of like breed specific diets, we are actively exploring more functional diets where there are additional things you can add into the product to address afflictions like digestion or itch, for example. Those are products that we're working on behind the scenes. In terms of like breed specific diets, the challenge there is the inventory, of 190 plus odd breeds. Do you have every breed, or do you pick the top 4 or 5 largest breeds and have that product only? There are implications in terms of size. Smaller breeds, you need smaller size versus larger breed, larger size. So, I would say idealistically, it'd be great to have product by breed for size. Commercially and operationally, very, very difficult to execute. We're not a startup anymore. We're a young company. Future could hold those types of products, but I would say for now, we're laser focused on scaling our core product offering and our core product platform. And then high growth does require a lot of effort to operationalize. It's not easy to produce and keep up with demand. And so we're always kind of thinking through how to continue to scale the inventory just with our current business.
As you're thinking about growth, do you anticipate remaining, loyal to the D2C market? Do you ever see yourself breaking channel, getting into retail?
Yeah, we sell a bit on Amazon now. Everything else is D2C through spotandtango.com and pupgum.com. Omnichannel is coming one day. Our goal is to meet the customer where they're at. And not everyone is purchasing through a Meta or TikTok ad. There's people that like to go to Petco, PetSmart, independent pet food retailers, and we respect that. I think for us, it's important to stage those decisions. Right now, our core D2C metrics are very strong. We're still getting, a lot of velocity online, and there are opportunities, and we've certainly talked to national retailers who have called saying, okay, let's go on shelf and let's do a gondola end, and we've resisted the temptation. Again, I think as operators and entrepreneurs, that I think it's really important sometimes to keep the blinders on and not get, over your skis as far as like pushing too hard in too many different directions concurrently. But omni-channel is coming one day. I wouldn't say it's like tomorrow, but something we're actively considering. I'd say pup gum is an opportunity to go omni-channel sooner, just given the profile of the product, lower AOV, the dental care offering. I could see that being on shelf before food, as an example.
Sure. Do you feel like omni-channel and being in store offers an easier opportunity to drive trial? And what are you doing to drive trial in the D2C space?
Yeah, so
how do you see
that's a
that?
great question. Yeah, that we do, like, there's a trial offer. So like when you sign up for spottango.com, there's a 14-day trial, which then converts to a monthly subscription, which is, product is sent on average every 4 weeks. But there's a 14-day trial. We often offer a discount of 25 to 50% off the trial, and there's a happy pup guarantee. So for folks that try the product, it's really a risk-free offering. If your dog doesn't like it, we give you your money back, which is another kind of rare offering in the space. But we are big believers in the product, obviously, such that we're comfortable offering that type of benefit. And so for folks that want to give it a try, again, it's no risk, and it's like, oh, if the dog doesn't like the beef, try the chicken, or if the dog doesn't like the format, get your money back. And that's worked really well for us.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. I mean, that's something you see in independent. I know my independent pet store here in Burlington. I have very rarely not had to take advantage of it, but I mean, there is that comfort that if you buy something and it doesn't work for your pet, you're not just going to be sitting with a bag of pet food that you have to donate. You bring it back to the store, they give you a credit, and they donate it to the local food shelf.
That's a great benefit.
So yeah, that's awesome that you do that program. I know we're almost out of time here, but to close up, you mentioned, you've debated the personalization and obviously the complexity and the shift in operation, supply chain, manufacturing. Talk to us, 7 years ago, you were making the food in your kitchen for your own dog. How much would you say it would be harder to get to doing personalized diets for other people's dogs at scale, or harder to go from, where this was just an idea and you're making your own meals for your dog to now you're a 9-figure company?
Yeah, the latter. Oh man, startup's hard. You've got to be a big believer, and passionate, and grit every day is different. Scaling from like zero is tough. It's very rewarding, looking back, but there's been so many mountains to climb, and it takes an army. This is not just my success; it's the success of everyone that works at the company. We hire really smart people, and our investors, our partners, our suppliers. It's a team sport. So I would say definitively building something and getting to this point is significantly more difficult than trying to offer personalized breed. But again, it's a journey. And I think entrepreneurship is, it can be rewarded and it's tough. And, but for those reasons, it's such an incredible journey and growth opportunity. I've learned so much about myself, obviously the industry. I speak the language, and building a company, but managing people and being a leader, and but also like personal development as well. There's been so many moments of kind of introspection, and still a lot of opportunity ahead. There's years ahead left for us here, and we're going to continue scaling and doing what we do best.
Well, yeah, I mean, having navigated those, I kind of expected that to be the answer, but good to hear that the future challenges can't be as hard as getting it up and off the ground. And, I imagine, having done that, you've got to have faith that, if you wanted to tackle something like breed specific diets or personalized or individualized diets, you can do it.
Right.
There's probably not, if you can conceptualize and innovate, you probably have the confidence now that you can execute on it. And that's got to be super cool. Last question, how did you navigate, one of the things I always see with people who are doing home cooked diets is, keeping them complete and balanced, and, and scaling from home cooking to, now a D2C 9-figure pet food brand. how did you handle that? Did you guys bring in veterinary nutritionists? How did you handle getting AFCO compliant,
Absolutely.
things like
Yep.
that?
Yep. Animal nutritionists. We work with, pre-mix suppliers. So there's the whole kind of human grade ingredients in addition to a premix, which makes the premix being, iron, potassium, copper, etc., to make sure that these recipes are complete and balanced for all life stages, puppy, large breed puppy, and adult dogs. And then we work with a number of labs all throughout the country in terms of testing GAs, AFCO, vitamin mineral profiles, etc. So again, that's a team sport. There's been a lot of folks that work on advisory and formulation, and then testing and validation. And then, of course, in our own Allentown facility that we've built, we have a whole dedicated QA team in-house. So a lot of that testing is what we do internally at the company.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Russell, I know, you have to be a very busy person heading up a company that, has scaled as rapidly as you guys have. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. This is an awesome conversation. I hope it gives people a little bit of insight into, the dynamics of the fresh pet food space, the benefits of feeding your pet a fresh food diet, and all the different options you have available to you. But I think Russell's, you've hit on something really innovative here, and I love the fact that you're able to offer minimally processed at such a significant discount. And for people out there that haven't experimented with some form of minimally processed pet food, I would say from personal experience, give it a try, because what I've seen from Peony in the last few weeks to months, you would not know she's going to be turning 11 in December. And I think there's the studies that prove the nutritional superiority, but I think a lot of people will tell you that you see it borne out in your pet's attitude and behavior, and just their general enjoyment of the food. So
yeah, amazing. Well, Peter, thank you so much for having me on. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. This is Peter Kenseth with Pet Working, everybody. On behalf of Russell Breuer, we'll talk to you again soon, and thanks for listening. Take care.